Hi, fifth grade. Today we're going to work in our math packet and we're going to be working in day 4. This problem that we're about to do is adding and subtracting fractions. So it's a little tricky and there are lots of steps. So just go slow, pause when you need to, and follow along. Good luck. Day 4. Mrs. Jenkins had 5 1/3 yards of bulletin board paper. She used 2 1/4 yards for a science bulletin board and 2 1/2 yards for a math bulletin board. How many yards of paper did Mrs. Jenkins have left over? So this is adding and subtracting fractions. We've got a few steps we need to follow here. Our first step is to add the amount of paper she's already used. So she used 2 1/4 for her science board and 2 1/2 for her math board. I drew a little model here. We've got 2 wholes and 1/4 plus 2 wholes and 1/2. If we write these out, we can just temporarily take out our whole numbers and we're adding up the fractions. Our first step here is to find the least common multiple. When you start listing the multiples of 4 and of 2, you need to find the one they have in common. Because to add or subtract fractions, you need a denominator that is the same. Over here I've listed them: 2, 4, 6, 4, 8, 12. And we see that they both have 4 in common. So we need to change these fractions to both have 4 in the denominator. 1/4 already does. How do we change 1/2 to have 4 in the denominator? Well, we can multiply 2 times 2. And if we do it to the bottom, we must do it to the top. So this fraction turns into 2/4. Now if you add 1/4 plus 2/4, you get 3/4. Okay, don't forget the 2 wholes and the 2 wholes here. So our first step ends up being 4 and 3/4. That is how much paper she's used. We need to now figure out how much is left over. She started with 5 1/3. We have to take out the 4 3/4. So again, our first step here is to find a least common multiple. How do we make our denominators the same? Well, we skip count or list our multiples of 3 and of 4, and we find out that 12 is their least common multiple. So if we write out our problem here, we have 5 1/3 minus 4 3/4, and we change our denominators. How do I make 3 into 12? Well, I can multiply it by 4. Three times 4 equals 12, and if I do it to the bottom, I must do it to the top. 1 times 4 equals 12. I've done it down here. How do I make 4 into 12 over here? I can multiply it by 3. And if I do it to the bottom, I must do it to the top. Excellent. And I've rewritten it down here. So now my new problem is 5 4/12 minus 4 9/12. So now can I take my fractions and subtract? Can I take 9 out of 4? I can't. I have to do another step here. I need to take 1 whole and add it to my fraction. 1 whole in this whole mixed number equals 12 total parts. So if I take 1 whole and move it over to my numerator here, I end up with a new fraction of 4, because I took 1 whole, and then I added that whole, which is equal to 12 parts. So 4 16/12. minus 4 and 9/12. Now I can subtract. 16 minus 9 is 7. And my denominator stays the same. Now what about my whole numbers? 4 minus 4 is 0. So the amount of bulletin board paper that she has left over is 7/12.